Welcome to Chiefs C4 Podcast, where cops, cars, and current events are the preferred topics of discussion. Kyle McPhee, aka The Chief, is a retired 31-year veteran detective of the Michigan State Police, an avid hot rod builder, an automotive connoisseur, a Native American, and the proud father of two sons, both members of the U.S. Army Michigan National Guard. This podcast is not intended for the weak at heart. Alpha males are always welcome, and honest opinions are always given. Now buckle your seatbelt. You are now entering the no snowflake zone.
So you opened your own company. What was the name of the first company that you started in Grand Rapids?
It was called Bannon Enterprise, Bannon. I carried that name for, I think, 5 years.
What does that mean?
It's a book. I'm a big fan of the objectivist philosopher Ayn Rand. And her favorite book, she didn't write it, but one of her favorite books ever written was a book called Calumet K. It's about this guy named Charlie Bannon who has to go into this grain elevator in, I think, 1901, and they can't get it built. They have to have it built by a certain time to fill it with grain, and all these failed managers come in. He comes in and he just kicks ass. And he's a young guy, and he'll do anything to get it done. And so I was sitting there like the week after I started my own business at 29, and I was sitting in our apartment, and my girlfriend came home from work, and she said, "How you doing, Charlie Bannon?" I'm like, there's the name. So
there you go.
Got some cheap business cards printed and carried that for 4 or 5 years.
That's quite a daunting task. When I retired after the state police, I had a couple small businesses, just one-man operations that I would do, like a little fingerprinting business that I did on my days off and stuff. And I wanted to ramp up my businesses after I retired. And then I ventured out into some other stuff that I did. I got my pilot's license for the drone stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, I knew that I still had, my retirement would cover me if I didn't make it, but I didn't want to be a failure I didn't want somebody to say, "Oh, you had to go back to work," or you didn't. So that was kind of my motivation. I got to make these things. I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to treat these things like they're a real deal instead of just the one-man operation and when I'm doing whatever I want kind of thing. So that kind of kept me motivated, and they kind of took off, and I'm teaching at 12 different colleges now, so, and I enjoy doing that.
You have never done anything half-assed.
I just, I think my dad is very much similar. He's, we always talk about, he always says, "Well, I'm OCD." And I said, "No, you're not." I said, "OCD is a medical diagnosis." I said, "You are a perfectionist. It's a different deal." And if you look up the differences,
good point.
The perfectionism has always been, if something isn't better than everybody else's, I'm very competitive that mine has to look better. And if it's not, then I got to start over and rethink what I did here. And I detailed cars. I mean, that you can't get any more than that, right? And so I just kind of carried over in everything I did. Every investigation I did it so when I was doing it, if they handed my report to the jury of citizens, they would understand what I was doing. I didn't have to explain anything. That's kind of how I did everything, right? So the perfectionism, I think, bleeds in through the DNA here, and I think my kids kind of have the same thing.
Yeah. What was the car you drove? That light blue?
The Chevelle. The Chevrolet Chevelle.
Shifter in that car?
I did. It had a white pool cue up. Cue ball.
Yes, I remember that.
I sold that to Becker.
Oh, you
sold that car, and I think he wrecked it.
We were talking a lot at Christmas about how you had that. Remember, Andy had that big Maharaj, that big, huge. I don't know what he was driving. Big car.
Oh yeah, he did. He had one of the big Crown Vics or something like that. Or yeah.
It would ride like a dream.
Yeah,
you just float with it.
Yeah.
And I had a Maverick. I had a little purple Maverick that would stall all the time. Then I had an old F-150 where the door didn't shut, so I had a bungee cord inside, going through the window and inside.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I love the stories that you and I got. The next time we do this, we're gonna do a 3-way. We're gonna get Ravy on here.
Oh, that would be great.
That guy remembers everything, man.
Oh, he does.
If I forget something, I just bounce it off him, and he knows the answer to it.
Yeah.
He's got a mind like a steel trap, but he's great to talk to. But his stories about going to Sand Bay are epic.
Every day we go to Sand Bay and baseball practice.
So you made a recent change of scenery from Grand Rapids, and you went back to the UP, and you started a new company. Tell us about that.
Well, I started the branch. It's still part of the Bamboo Lab, the company. It's just a kind of a subsidiary program. It's a project, I call it.
Hmm.
It was just last November 3rd or November of last year. I don't know what day it was. A friend of mine, Dave Dick, who I credit all my podcast success to him because he's a good friend. He's a hard charging Army Ranger, type guy. Now he's a really successful financial advisor.
Hmm.
Super nice guy. And he said, dude, do you want to keep doing what you do? Because at the time I was doing right during COVID, I did between 50 and 70 coaching sessions a week on the phone.
Wow.
And it was wearing me down. But at this time last year, I wasn't, or November of 21, I wasn't doing that many. But he knew I was just getting worn down a little bit. I still loved what I do. But I said, I could do it for a while longer. He goes, so you want to sit on the phone and talk? You want to travel and speak? I said, I'd like to find another avenue. And he said, you got to do a podcast. Well, I knew what a podcast was, Kyle, but I probably listened to 5 podcasts in my life up to that point.
Yeah.
He goes, I'll help you. We'll look at, so I did some research, and it was 1 year ago today that we aired the first episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast.
That's right. That's right.
1 year, January 3rd of last year.
And you've had some great guests on there, man. You really have. I've got to listen to them all. And
well, you were one of them.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you ended up with me on there, but
your downloads have done very well. I've compared them to comparison. They've done very. We've done 65, I think we did, or maybe 60. I think we're going to do 65 this week.
How many countries are you in now?
We're in 6 continents, 42 countries, and 1,091 cities. I think is what it was.
Gosh, that's tremendous, man.
42 countries. It's
yeah.
Yeah,
that's great, Brian. That's great. That's amazing that people pick up on these things from places you would never think, huh?
No, it's weird. Like we had Afghanistan joined like 3 weeks ago. Pakistan last week.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, like, what? Where are we getting this? But I love it that it's spread around.
You always have such a message of positivity. You always leave the podcast with positive, but your guests, and even if you do a solo on there, there's always a kind of an uplifting, inspirational message. And I think a lot of people are looking for that right now. I mean, and they're getting it from somebody who's lived it, who's been there, done that. Like you said, you were digging through your couch for change, and you've been there. So you can say that you got great experience to do this. And I'm happy for you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, you're back up in the Upper Peninsula. What is your greatest inspiration growing up, and why?
I mean, the person would be my mother for sure, because
you lost your father at a young age.
Yep, lost my father. He would have turned 88 years old today. So we're kind of celebrating 2 things.
Wow.
My dad's 88th birthday and first anniversary of the Bamboo Lab podcast. And like I said, I can't imagine a better way to celebrate it than being with a great brother like you. And
man, those are great 2 big events in your life.
They were
on this date, huh?
They were. So just watching my mom, the way she's 87 right now. She'll be 88 next summer. We're together for 5 days at Christmas this year. She still exercises. She still works all summer and volunteers in the winter.
She's nonstop, isn't she?
No, she's nonstop. And she still gets around really well, walking around. She wouldn't go for walks with me when we did some a lot of snow hikes. Dawson and I did, and walking around the block we lived there. Yeah. Going because it was slippery out. But she walks all year long until the snow comes.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah, that would be you were how old when you lost your dad?
I was like 4.5. He died in November. I turned 5 in March. So 4 and 8 months or something like that.
Now, what I didn't know growing up with you at the time, I didn't know this when we were young, but your dad was quite a musician and has some ties to some famous country music people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was a mechanic by trade. That's why I asked you where you worked, because my dad, where Napa is now downtown?
Yeah.
Where the Napa store is, right by St. Anne's Auto. My dad owned that gas station and garage. One behind it was his first one.
Wow.
And he and Owen McFarland, Richard McFarland's grandpa, were partners. Then my dad had Jack's Auto Clinic. Then he owned a gas station, kind of where Subway is now. I think there's a Subway there. Or there's something up there. They had, I think he had an Amoco station or I don't know. With the
there was the old marathon station.
Yeah, it was a little tiny building. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay, that he owned that. That was so he was a mechanic by trade, and a certified mechanic. And then he was a country singer. It was a songwriter, guitarist, and lead singer for a couple of local bands. One with his family, his brothers, and his brother and dad, and a couple of family members, cousins. But then one with Dickie Becker, Randy Becker. And I don't know who the other fourth or fifth people were, but they became good family members. And yeah, the story was that Dickie Becker was my dad's manager, and he was a guitarist, I think, on the team or the band. And his son David Becker lives in Grand Rapids, so came over my apartment a couple of years ago, and we were talking. He says, "I still remember the day that Johnny Cash called our house."
Johnny Cash
called Dickie Becker's house, and he answered, "This is Johnny Cash." And he talked to my dad's manager, Dickie, and the quote was, "We don't want the band, we just want Jack Bosley."
Wow.
So I think what happened, Kyle, my dad had written a song for my mother. And the part of it is, "If you're walking by my window, please walk slow, for I'm dreaming of you." That's actually on his tombstone.
Wow.
And I think that's the song that they sent out a demo of my dad singing it and to Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash literally called, not his manager, but Cash called for my dad.
Wow.
And that was, I'm going to guess that was September of 71. Somewhere, and my dad died November 4th of 71. So never got to see that come to fruition.
Jeez, what a shame.
He played with I forget the guy who sings Jingle Bell Rock, My Fraulein. The guy he sang with a couple guys that had big hits, number one hits, but Johnny Cash was the big one that was taken.
He's really talented, huh?
Yeah.
Good Lord. So you've I was going to ask you, and you probably just answered this question, but what was the most difficult thing you've ever gone through in your life? And I'm assuming losing your father.
It was losing my father was kind of the impetus. And I won't go into too much detail because I don't know what your audience would like to hear, but I'll share as much as you'd like me to share. When my dad died, my mother went back to work. I was put in the care of a extended family member who abused me pretty profusely. And I have no problem sharing the story. I mean, I couldn't say I've gotten over it, but I've gotten through it.
Yeah.
And, he would tell me that, I'm a bad boy, and I share any of what he's done. My mother's going to die as well. And the reason my dad died is because I'm a bad boy. I killed my dad.
This was like a psychological abuse.
It was warfare, man. And I remember walking to the bus stop because I was kindergarten at the time, and I went to school at noon. And so he would do this, and then he would say these things and walk me to the bus stop. And I remember just being kind of like, what the hell just happened? But I couldn't, conceptualize it that way. I would just be in a fog.
Wow. Because we were growing up, Brian, I wouldn't have never known that. So that's kind of why I always tell, my kids is, you don't know what somebody is going through, man. I didn't know this when we were young growing up. I didn't know that you had gone through something like that.
Yeah. I didn't even tell anybody till I was in college.
Wow.
And I told my brother, he told my sister, then we got together and told my mom, and my mom's been extremely supportive, and she's been my rock over the past 30 years of dealing with this, or 30 years of me being open about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of therapy, a lot of reading, a lot of self-work. And, the funny thing is, my son has asked me, do you wish all that wouldn't have happened? I'm like, geez, it's a tough question, because I wish it never had to have happened. And I don't wish it on anybody else, but
that might have motivated you to get where you are.
I can look back on that, and I can care about people. And I'm probably constantly out trying to prove to myself to get rid of those self-doubts and those insecurities that I carried for decades.
See, and Brian, that's a perfect thing for you during your personal coaching sessions too, that you've been there and done that. You know what can come from stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's great, man. I mean, I'm glad. I did not know that you went through that until you mentioned that on one of your podcasts. And I never knew that, man, when we were growing up. But God, you must have had a lot of built up emotion in you coming up as a kid and not telling anybody something like that,
Oh, you think that you're the only one in the world. And you almost, you knew it was bad. You knew it was evil. You knew it was something that should have never happened. It should never happen again. But you don't know. That was before Oprah Winfrey kind of, those talk shows started exposing some of that stuff of child abuse and things like that. But you don't know. Nobody talked about it, back in the 70s and 80s.
Did the individual that did that to you Did you know when he passed away and stuff?
Yep,
Like,
passed away maybe 2 or 3 years after it started.
really?
Yeah, yeah, and then I thought,
You never got to confront him about it or nothing?
no, what I did one day, Kyle, is I wrote a letter to him. I think I was still in college, and it happened, they know that cabin next to my house?
Yeah.
It used to be a little house. That's when it happened, where it happened, and, I wrote a letter to him, and I went into the room that would happen in, and I put it in a pan, and I burnt the letter.
Oh boy.
It was a letter of how basically it was like, "You are not going to this is not gonna affect this is not gonna tear me apart. This is not
Yeah.
this is gonna make me a better man," and
You took the power back.
yeah, and that was a big turning point for me right there.
Wow, good for you, man.
But that's where you saw a lot of that aggression in rugby. I was just starting to go through therapy when I was in college, so I had just, at that time, a decade or 2 of more than that. I had almost 20 years of pent up, rage in me.
Those boys were getting beat down on the
It
field,
was
didn't
getting beaten.
understand what it was all about.
Right. They didn't know
Wow.
they didn't deserve it, but yeah, I mean,
Dang,
it
that's
helped in some ways, but
man. Well, you've come out through the other side, brother. I'm proud of you.
thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that
So
very
I'm going to ask you another thing too, because I'm going to turn the tides on you a little bit here, because
All
you've
right.
asked me some of these questions. So all these things that you've been through and the accomplishments, and you've owned your own business now, and you're doing well, and you got a great family and stuff. On a typical day, what do you consider a win? What's a big victory for Brian?
I knew that question was coming too. And it's so funny because I ask it every week and I
I
still
know.
I still have
It's
to.
a little harder than it sounds
It
sometimes.
is. I know. And I purposely did. I knew the questions that you were going to ask me, and I purposely didn't. I didn't want to look at them
You just wanted to wing it?
because I had to figure out. I wanted to wing them, but I have thought about them. What's interesting for me now, um, for one, professionally, it's when I get done with a podcast and I know it was a really good podcast.
It was a
I know
banger.
yeah, it was. It was like, okay, the questions were crisp, the answers were crisp, they were genuine, authentic, and it just flowed. That to me gives me the biggest kick, emotionally or professionally, but also, Kyle, it was I got a lot of really nice texts at Christmas from clients,
Mm.
just in emails,
Feedback.
texts. Yeah, just saying, "I want you to know you changed my life. You've
Wow.
become like a father to me that I never had. The only one I can trust, and you will challenge me, and you do it out of love." And that means a
Gee.
lot to me. But
Yeah.
so I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to give a couple because personally is well, like last night, my son and I watched a TV show, and he gets up and he's getting to be a big muscular guy.
Big dude.
Yeah, he's tough as nails, and he's 20 years old. And
He's a lacrosse player, right?
lacrosse player, yeah, in northern. He's a martial arts dude, and love you, Dad, and gives me a big hug. And like today, he texts me. I'm like, Dad, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you. He was up working right now.
Wow.
He's working for the day in Marquette, but he's coming back tonight. Dad, I want you to know I'm thinking of you today, and I love you. I'm like, okay. I didn't know he must have read that it was his grandpa's birthday.
Oh,
That's what So little things like that. My grandson, when I walk in the door now, Kyle, and he just giggles when he sees me.
yeah. Fun time. It's fun time now.
Great times. Those are the things that are little wins now. Before it was, did I bring a new client on? Did I make, something like, did I book a speaking engagement? Those are still important because I love doing them, but they're not the wins that they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to affect others too in a positive way. Like for me, if I teach a class and the class is really engaged and I teach them something that they didn't know before, and you could see the light bulb go on, and they come up to you after class and go, that was one of the best trainings we ever had. That to me is I did my job.
You did your job. Yeah.
Yeah,
you're changing. Yeah, you're changing. I don't you think, Kyle, that when we were younger, it was about getting our career going, making money. Then it became about family, and that's those things still stay there. But then it becomes more about meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
What am I leaving here for my family and for other people? And
yes, I learned so much. I got some of the best advice come from the old troops in St. Ignace that were friends with my dad. And they said, when you get, to the post that you're going to, be seen and not heard. Go to all the older troops that are in the squad room and listen to what they say and how they do things. Sponge a little bit off of everybody you work with, put it together and create your own style. And I did exactly that. And I worked with some tremendous street cops that taught me so much things, not just about police work, but about life and the better way to do things and stuff. I learned so much from those older guys, and that I think helped me in my career. But the farther and farther we go, I don't see that type of relationship anymore. Maybe it does exist, but I don't see it as much.
Did they come to you, Kyle, when you were transitioning your career down?
Once they, you mean now?
Yeah.
No, they did not.
Really?
Except I ran my own crew at the end, young troops. Brian, it was one of the most fascinating things, and I think I might have mentioned on your podcast, but I had the oldest crew. Everybody had 25 years in on my team.
Wow.
And then they retired, and I ended up with the youngest crew with all the new guys came in with less than 5 years in the department. And I went from one extreme to the other, and everybody was banking on old McPhee ain't going to be able to work with these young kids. And it turned out that young crew that I had was one of the best teams I ever had.
Really?
Because they wanted to learn some of the old school ways, but they brought some of the new stuff and taught me some things.
So you listened as well as taught.
Absolutely. I never tell anybody they don't know it. If it works and they get results, I'm all on board with it.
That's leadership.
So I was huge. I was just like you. The worst places I worked, I was micromanaged at every step of the operation when they're looking over my shoulder after they told me what they want me to do. Just give me the mission, I'll do it, then you can critique it. But they were over my shoulder while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And I worked for bosses, and I just could not function that way. And then when I finally got my own crew and I started to mentor some of these young troops, I had a blast doing that. That was the best time of my career.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. So when you do your personal coaching sessions, and I don't want you to give up anybody's personal information or anything like that, but what is like one of the most requested areas that your clients ask you to help them with? And then before we get out of here today, I want you to leave us with a message that can help others navigate through the tough times that we're currently experiencing now.
I would think the one they ask me for the most is not the one they necessarily need, but the one I ask for more is they have a difficult time with time management and procrastination. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a misnomer because I tell everybody, well, you're trying to manage time and time is not manageable. So there's one thing. You're not going to manage gravity or time. Or death. Those things are happening regardless of you. Well, what I teach them is how to manage their energy and focus within the time they have. And so I work with them on a process of what we call EFM, energy and focus management, on how do you actually, you take an hour of your day, how do you get the most productive hour out of that?
Wow. Yeah.
And we worked on that today with 4 different clients.
Do you ever use the principle of, and I read the book, Eat the Frog, where you prioritize things? But you prioritize and you put the most important things first, and you don't get past it until it's done, kind of thing.
That's Brian Tracy, I believe, who wrote that book.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've been recommending that book, and I've read a lot of Brian Tracy's, and I think it's probably in my Amazon catalog or thing. But
you're an avid reader.
Yeah.
Voracious reader.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to recommend 3 books before I hang up. I have them sitting here.
Yeah.
I pulled them out. I just 3 books that I just finished or I'm currently reading.
I love to read, but I get distracted with the phone and the television sometimes when that book is sitting on the table and I should turn everything off and read it. I did it the first time recently. Our friend Sean Ravey wrote a book called Rebel Without a Clue about his dad in the Sid Ignace car show.
Yep.
Well, that was a subject that I was very close to because we grew up there and my dad was involved with the beginning of that. I read that book from beginning to end and in 2 days. I only sat it down one time. Yeah.
You can relate to it.
Yes, because I'm mentioned in the book, of course. And so the stories I could relate to what you was talking about, but I haven't done that with a book. I set one down, I'll read 4 chapters and I don't get back to it to a week. And I'm like, I got to go back and read the 4 that I previously read, but
I hate to say I'm a disciplined guy, even though people would call me that, because I think in my head, I'm going all over the place, and I'm always second questioning, self-doubting things that I'm doing. But the one thing I do that helps me is I get up really early. I'm up. My alarm goes up at 5. I'm always up before my alarm, so I'm up about 4:55 in the morning, and I roll out of bed and I do planks right away. I get the hardest thing done because planks are the most painful thing I can do physically.
They suck.
So, they suck. And I literally roll out of bed as I slap my watch on and I hit my timer and boom, I go. And so that kind of gets me up. Then I come out and do my banana and water, my protein, and I sit down. So I'm sitting down by 5:30 in my chair and I have a series of books that I read, boom, boom, boom. And so by 6:30, I've gotten about an hour reading in, no phones, nothing. Then I give myself the opportunity to get on Facebook. Sometimes I'm done a little early and I'll post on Facebook earlier, but that's when I start the distractions. But I just get those things done early enough. And I always check my text to see if somebody called or needed me in the middle of the night that was an emergency.
Yep.
But I don't respond or look at them unless it looks like it's an emergency.
When I was a detective, I would, when you're at the office, usually at 8 o'clock when everybody shows up, it's nonstop interruption in your office about this or that or other thing. And you get very little done because you're doing everybody else, helping everybody else. But so what I would do is go in there an hour and a half, 2 hours before my shift. I would get more work done in the 2 hours before 8 o'clock than I would the entire day.
Right.
Yeah. Because I went in there and just kicked ass for 2 hours.
You ate the frog.
I ate the frog. That's absolutely
See, I haven't read the book, but I guess I eat the frog too. Just get the hard stuff done. Stuff I don't want to do.
People like assistance with time management, right?
They do. They really do. And it takes a lot from them. I tell them I don't want to use that terminology. I said, we will for a while because that's how we're used to time management. I said, but you're telling yourself you're trying to manage something you can't. We're going to talk about your energy and focus. You have full control over those things. And so
are people overwhelmed with social media and computer stuff?
Yes. They're just overwhelmed with work, Kyle. I mean, what I'm finding is that my clients are all pretty high achievers and they don't slow down. So when a company, there's one company that I work with, I love dearly, but I coach 20 of their people, and they are one of the top companies I've ever coached. They have great leadership and they have great employees, and they keep their employees. They do not give up on people, but they work those people. Holy cow, do they work hard? Like our generation will work, you're going in there, you're going to put the time in. And my daughter now is blessed enough to work for the company.
Nice.
She applied and started her job there just almost a year now. And she runs her own office in Marquette with the company. And she told me she loves the challenge, but she goes, boy, do we work. I'm like, yeah, you do.
Brian, do you think that your daughter will ever get into the line of work that you're in? Think she'll ever transition into the personal coaching and peak performance stuff?
I can tell you she could.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Is she alpha female?
Oh, yeah. Both my kids are alphas. There's no doubt about it. They don't take any shit, and she would be fantastic. She would be far better than I am.
Just for the record, you didn't take any shit either when you were younger.
No, I didn't. I guess, but
I knew one thing: if we were going to be having a beer at the bar and someone was going to start something, Brian Bosley was going to be on my team. That's all I knew.
but here's the rule, Kyle. I never lost a fight when I was sober, and I never won a fight when I was drinking. So you want to be sober.
That's good. Well, I know of one that you won, but we won't get into that.
No, I know which one you're referring to. I fought a lot in the rugby pitch. I was known as a fighter on the rugby team. And it's funny, I was telling Steve Becker, I said, I can't imagine striking a human being anymore. It's been 30 years or more.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously self-defense or somebody's coming after somebody I love, it's going to be a bad
day.
Do
they have rugby fights like hockey has fights?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
The same way? Just fist to fist?
Fist to fist. I remember, Kai, we were playing Michigan at Central, and this guy was probably in a Rutgers scrum. Big guy. I told Becker this story. And we got into a little scuffle in the scrum of ruck, but nothing big. And then we were running on the field, and I caught up to him. And as he's running, I just wham, I kicked him right in the clock, right in the head. And he turned around like that, and I kept running. Well, he found me, and we got into a little scuffle, and he had long arms, and he was a big boy, much bigger than I was. And I remember they were holding me back. His team was holding me back, and I'm punching him as hard as I can. And it's not even facing the guy. He's attacking me and I'm going boom, boom. Finally, like, get me out of here. So we both got kicked out of the game. And we were both excluded from the next game too.
Oh,
and
wow.
The thing is with rugby, which is a really cool sport, at least back then, you played a team, you fight on the pitch, but afterward, the home team has to sponsor a party for dinner and drinks with the visiting team.
Oh, really?
So you go back, you rent
you got to break bread with these guys.
Yeah, right after that. You fight at 5 o'clock, and at 5:30, you're having a beer and toasting them. And so either you rent a bar out or you go back to the rugby house or, And I talked to the guy afterward, and he was a great guy. Wow. But he was just bigger than I was, tougher than I was, stronger than I was, and I did strike first, but he struck last.
That's awesome, man.
Good memories. But anyway, and so to go back to my daughter could. I don't know that she will. Mm-hmm. My son could, but I don't think he ever will. Dawson told me, Dad, I love what you do for a living. You provided for our family well. I just can't sit at a desk.
Oh. Yeah, he's an outdoor kid.
He is. He's going to construction manager, even though he doesn't realize. I never sit at a desk. I'm walking all day as I'm talking to
Sure.
clients. But I know what he means. He wants to be building something, which I respect.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So give us a motivational, little motivational for everybody of
Well,
we're going through tough times right now. Everything's polarized, political, you name it. How do we navigate this kind of thing? What
Well, I think you want like how does a cultural do it, or how does an individual deal with it?
how's the individual deal with it?
That's a really good question, actually. I think where we've gotten off track as people, Kyle, is, and I've said this before, there's a quote that my favorite quote of all time, and I always misquote it, but I love it. It's Michelangelo. He sculpted this, and you've heard me say this, I believe, in the podcast, an angel outside of a marble angel outside of a cathedral. And they asked him how he did it. And he said, really, basically, he said, I didn't sculpt the angel. He said, I saw the angel in the marble and I sculpted until I set it free.
Wow.
And I believe that we all are born with this, I'm going to call it our true peak identity, who we are and who we are destined to be. And it may not be perfection, but it's damn near close to perfection. It's where we should be operating at our peak level. Whatever you do for a living, you operate your personal profession at a peak level. And I think teachers, family, friends, media, social media, culture, they start putting on all these layers on us of marble, excess marble. And pretty soon at a certain point in your life, you're carrying around a fake ID. Your two peak IDs inside there, and you're carrying this around. You're trying to behave like a certain person. You're afraid of your own shadow. You're afraid of success. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of trying. You're afraid of getting married. You're afraid whatever. And so, and I think what's happened in our country over the past.
Are you hiding behind these layers?
And you don't even know. I don't think you even know it's there. I don't think people are aware. They think that's just who they are. They don't realize that isn't who they were. Somebody else created that identity. But even we create it, because anything that I've ever done bad in my life, that goes on my identity. Any thought I've ever had that was a bad thought that maybe nobody else knows about, that goes on my identity. And I start thinking that's who I am. And so we operate and behave and feel and think far less than who we really are inside. And we got to chip away at that. I love this. I see it on Facebook sometimes. It's a picture of a person with a real nice body, and they've got this bunch of marble, and they're chipping away at their marble. Like we're creating. That's a really good artistic symbol of what we have to do is get back to who we truly are. Because what media has done in the last 10 years has stopped being media. It's just talking heads now. They're giving opinion, not facts. They're actors, not reporters and journalists. And so, especially when people, especially since COVID, and have people sat in front of their idiot box for hours at a day, and that excess marble just built up. So now they can't even see through their own lens of reality. They're seeing through what the media told them is a lens of reality. Yeah, and I think, we have to get back to discarding I think discard media completely. Not social media. I mean, I don't watch news, and I don't believe in watching news. I don't. I mean, I just don't.
Well, it's not news reporting anymore. Remember Walter Cronkite?
Yes.
I never knew if he was a Democrat or a Republican.
I don't know
what was going on in the world.
Yep.
And no one cared about whether he was a Catholic or he was a Baptist. No one cared.
Nobody even knew it. Yeah. I mean, he reported. Well, I think what happened in the society is Ted Turner came along and created CNN, which I'm not bashing CNN, but he created 24/7 news.
Yeah.
24/7 news, or 24, whatever. And all of a sudden, they have to have content. So where do they go? They go to the extreme weirdos that say weird stuff, and all of a sudden ratings go up.
And so social media created everybody's opinion matters, right? Right. And Brian, my mother told me something, God bless her soul. When I was young, her famous saying was, I was always asking questions about, well, what about that guy? Or what do they do in this? And I was always concerned with what everybody else, she always would tell me, mind your own business. Right. Man, nobody minds their own business anymore, do they?
They don't. And we have confirmation bias. And I'm not going to, I mean, if I'm an average American, I'm not going to talk to a person who disagrees with me. I'm going to go to my friends or family. I've lost family members this year by my own choice, not because I disagree with them, but because we disagree and they couldn't accept my disagreement. So they became toxic.
Was that part of your deal where you were getting negativity out of your life? Is just
yes, yeah. It was. I chose 3 people to excommunicate out of my life for good.
Wow.
And I respect their opinion. I would love to sit and talk to them about their opinions, but they can't do that. So they became very toxic, post during the COVID and the quarantine, and they didn't produce anything of any quality work. They didn't work. They didn't create. They didn't produce. They just watched CNN or Fox or whatever they watched. They just watched TV all day. I know what they watch, but I'm not going to bash one network or another. But I know what network they watch. But and they just created this. Their marble just got thicker and thicker until they can't even see reality anymore.
You know what I saw, Brian, from my perspective in my job was, and I see it even getting worse, is it seems like as human beings, the younger generation, there's no I'm not sure what the word for human life. There's no consideration for it. I mean, it just seems like the moral fabric is where we used to, if someone passed away, we would be like, oh my God. And now I see these kids that are going out doing these shootings and stuff, and they just have no regard for human life. I mean, it's just nothing, just blank.
Yeah. And I don't, what's the cause of that, Kyle? Like,
I don't know.
I don't either. Like, I don't understand. Is it, some say it's video games, I don't know. Is it social media? Is it that we're watching 24/7 news where we're seeing wars live? I don't, what's desensitizing kids?
Yeah, that's the word right there that you just said, desensitized. In my own opinion, I think there's a thing where there's a social hierarchy in school, and some kids, I used to tell my kids this, and they weren't always, I had one that got pushed around a lot, and one was more of a popular crowd. But I tell them, if you ever see somebody sitting by themselves in the lunchroom and they're excommunicated from the rest of the school, go over and sit up with them and make them feel like a human being and not a piece of trash. I think a lot of that attention type of stuff, they weren't. Brian, I coached football for several years, and majority of my young football teams were from one-parent families. And I always said this: some of these kids played football because they needed football more than football needed them. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of that type of kid that what's going to happen to them when they get older, and this buildup of inside of them from not being accepted, because maybe they look different or they act different, whatever. And then it has to come out, and ultimately maybe it comes out in some kind of a violent way.
I think you nailed it on the head. That what you just said is that single parent family is such an incredible detriment to so many people. I mean, it really is. I mean,
now don't get me wrong. There's some superstar mothers that did one hell of a job raising their kids. That's not what I'm saying. Some kids didn't have any parent supervision or structure. The reason I said that is because I ran a very structured football practice, and I saw some of these kids loved the structure. They were looking for structure. They didn't have it, wherever they were growing up or how they were growing up, and they really loved it. And actually, some of them actually went on to go into the military. They loved the structure so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think, of course, I was raised by a single mother, and I was a single parent of Dawson I still am. But
there you go. You lived it.
Years when I think he was 2 when his mother left. I just think that overall that it's, you can do the job, but, it just gives you so much more difficult a lot of times. And I think some single mothers or single fathers even, they don't know how to handle both roles because they're working. They're trying to hold a big family together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slip through the cracks pretty easily.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. So give us your reading recommendations. What you got for us?
Okay, this book here by Robin Sharma, The Everyday Hero Manifesto. I got to turn this right way. Fantastic book. Really? Fantastic book on just this guy works with world leaders and billionaires, and he coaches them, and it's just a book on how to take that everyday hero out of you and exhibit it every day. Wow. This right here is probably the best book ever written on money, by Derek Kinney, Good Money Rebel. He was a guest on the podcast, a good buddy of mine. This book, it's about how good people should have more money so they can do better things around the world. And this book talks about heroism. And Kyle, I can't get this. I'm going the wrong way.
Right there.
Yeah. Okay. Fearless by Eric Blyme. This book is amazing. It's about a young man, not a young man. He was 30 or 20s, by Adam Brown. I just finished this yesterday.
I'm going to write that down.
Navy SEAL 6 or Team SEAL 6. This guy, the first page, he dies in February or March, I think it was, of 2010. He's killed in action, but it starts at his life and it goes through what an amazing journey he had, and wife and 2 kids. And sorry, my dog's rolling around. Hey, stop it, stop it. And it'll make you feel like it'll inspire the hell out of you.
Oh, good. I'm gonna try it out.
You would love it. You would love it with your your police force experience. You would love it, and your attitude. It resonated well with me.
Good deal. Here's one that I enjoy. And this is a audio book, but Jocko Willink.
I have that book. Yeah, he wrote that. Jocko, did he write that?
Yeah, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin.
I didn't know that. I read that book a couple years ago. I didn't know Jocko wrote that.
Yeah, I love that guy. I think
maybe I didn't read that book. Maybe it's in my book.
I just bought the new book from David Goggins, former Navy SEAL. He's always the one that tells everybody to stay hard. That's his that guy's so intense. But
that's a kind of black and white cover a little bit.
Yeah.
I got that for Dawson for Christmas.
Yeah, great. I got like 4 chapters in. I love it already. So
that's have you read what's the hunter? He's a big hunter, but he hunts like extreme, but he runs like a marathon every day, works at a utility company, then comes home and shoots 1,000 arrows every night. I'll send it to you, gosh. I wish I could think of it to tell your audience, Kyle. It's an amazing book. I listened to it on Audible, and I bought Dawson a copy because he wanted to, and he loved it. He's going to be mad at me because I can't think of it. Anyway,
we'll put a little deal up afterwards. So.
I know I listened. It's on podcast. So Dawson read it, and now Dawson's reading this Goggins one.
Nice, good deal. Well,
man, it's one message.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to make one recommendation to the audience after we talk today. It's one of the goals I have or expectations I have of myself this year is go out this year and track it. Practice 50 random acts of kindness this year. Just 50 things. It can be as little as holding a door, but do it consciously. It can be paying the people at the toll booth behind you. It can be something small, but do it consciously. Say, I'm going to do that right now and go do it. If you do 1 a week for this year and more people do that, that's how we start changing the world. Yeah, little tiny acts, like you said. Looking at people in the eye contact, holding doors. That's how we change the world.
Getting back to where we were.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah, Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming on here today. And the old podcast has been a little bit stagnant. I had some things going on the last few months, and so this one's going to recharge their batteries, and we're gonna get going on this thing. I'll probably never get to the level of the Bamboo Lab podcast. But I'm going to shoot for you.
This was perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to shoot.
This was the best way to celebrate the anniversary of my podcast and my dad's birthday. And I couldn't imagine both a better brother and a better, I'm sure the audience is an amazing group of people. So it's an honor to be here, Kyle.
And I think for your podcast, I think a great thing that we could do with that is if you gave just a 2-minute motivational, inspirational message that we could put on that YouTube channel every week. We'd put one up, and that would be the one that hits when someone clicks on that YouTube channel to see your face, give that video that motivational inspiration. I think that'd be great.
I know you, and I have that written down on my notes. It's Kyle. I call it Kyle's clip. You remind me of what you said. Have a clip, and it's going to happen.
All right,
it's going to happen this year. I'm going to need your guidance on that one because I'm still figuring this all out.
You got it, man. Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. And hang around here after we go off the air, and I want to chat with you. So,
of course, brother.
All right. Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure, man.
All right.